Now we're moving on to Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem states that the square of the sums of your the sum of the squares of your two legs is equal to the square of your hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse is the longest side of your triangle, and then the right triangle is always across from the right angle, since that is your greatest angle in a right triangle. So we're going to do two examples only. I could do more examples, contact me to do more examples, but right now I'm just doing just two examples. Example one is finding a hypotenuse, and example two will be finding a leg. So here we have a right triangle, and how we know is because we see the symbol here for the right angle. And step one in solving for your missing leg when you know two legs is to label your hypotenuse. Remember, your hypotenuse is always across from your right angle. So step one, label your hypotenuse C. So we're going to just write C over here. It's always across from your right angle. Step two will be to write the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Once you have written that, you're going to go ahead and plug in your values for A, B, C, A, B, and leave any unknown as a letter, and so for your unknown. So we know our two legs, so you can just make any of this A or a B. So you can either make 5A or 9B. I'm just going to say 9 squared. I'm just going to put in 9 for A. Plus, and my B will be 5 squared. My B will be 5 in this case. Either one, A or B, doesn't really matter. What always matters is your hypotenuse, though. So that's the first step you always want to do, is identify your hypotenuse. So then we go ahead and solve. 9 squared is 81. 9 times 9 is 81. So we'll go ahead and say 81 plus 5 squared, which is 25, equals c squared. We then go ahead and add 81 plus 25. That's 106. So we're going to write 106 equals c squared. The last step to solve for hypotenuse is to do the opposite of squaring, which is to take the square root. So then we take the square root of both sides. Square root is gonna cancel out the square, so we can now remove that, and we're just left with c on the right hand side. So we get that c is equal to the square root of 106, which is 10 point something. You can use your calculator to get an approximate value. So we're just going to use our calculator here and just write type 106 and click right here to get the square root, which is we're going to round it to the hundredth place. So we have 10.2956. We have 10.295, which rounded to the hundredth place will be 10.30. So it'll be approximately 10.30. Because we're doing approximately, you don't use an equal sign, you use the approximation sign, which is a squiggly equal sign. And so we get our final answer for example one. Our missing leg is 10.3. is approximately 10.3. Or if we want the exact answer, the square root of 106. If they ask for the exact answer, you want to write the square root of 106. If you ask for approximate answer, you write to the 100th place, you write 10.30. To the 10th place, 10.3. Let's move on to example 2. Again, the first step, 2 steps are always the same. First step, identify your hypotenuse and label it C. It's always across from your right angle, so we're going to go right here. I'm going to label that LC. Once we've done that, then the other 2 legs, it doesn't matter which one you call A or which one you call B. I'm going to go ahead and label this missing one B and just let 15 be A. But first step is always identify your C, your hypotenuse. Step 2, write down A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I'm going to put a little divider here so you know I'm addressing this in this step. Wow. First step, go ahead and plug in your numbers for that you know. If you know A, plug it in. If you know B, plug it in. If you know C, plug it in. So we're going to go ahead and plug in 15 for A. Right, 15 squared. Plus, we don't know the other leg, so we'll just leave it as B squared. Equals, we do know our hypotenuse is 17. So we'll say equals 17 squared. 15 squared is 225. You can go ahead and look at it in the calculator if you want to. You just say 15 times 15 or use this 15 squared right here. So we're going to write 225 plus B squared equals 17 squared is 289. You should have your squares memorized, but if you don't and you have access to your calculators, then use it. You just say 17 times 17. Just put it in there so you can see. Next step is to subtract 225 from both sides so that we can get that B squared by itself. Get B squared is equal to, you can use your calculator or you can simply just see that 8 minus 2 is 6 and 9 minus 5 is 4. So B squared is equal to 64. And you should know what number squared equals 64. What number times itself gives you 64. If you said 8, you are correct. We'll go ahead and take the square root of both sides. Again, square root cancels out the square. We're just left with B is equal to the square root of 64. Which is 8. Square root of 64 is both the positive and negative 8. But since in this case we're talking about a triangular figure, we only take the positive answers, like when you're only talking about the length. So my answer here for B would be 8. So this triangle has length of 15, 17, and 8. The biggest takeaway you should get from here, well, all of it, is your first couple of steps are going to be the same. It's first takeaway is to know that your hypotenuse is always opposite your right angle. And second takeaway is to always identify your hypotenuse first, which you know is always opposite from your right angle. So go ahead and identify that and write C there. Second step, write a squared plus b squared equals c squared every time. Write the formula down for Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Then you go ahead and plug in your A, your B, your C, whichever ones you know. If you don't know your B, you just leave it alone. If you don't know a leg, you just leave like your B alone. If you don't know your hypotenuse, you just leave your C alone. And then you go ahead and solve. When you're solving for the hypotenuse, you're gonna square both sides and then add them, and then take the square root at the end. If you're solving for a leg, you're gonna square your hypotenuse, then subtract that from one of your legs squared, and then take the square root of that, okay? Hope that helps.